Hey guys, Carl from Purple Moose Plays. Today I'm going to be taking a look at The Dark Quarter, a storytelling crime-solving game set in 1980s New Orleans, filled with voodoo magic, vampires, and other fantastical elements, from designer Evan Derrick, and co-published by Lucky Duck Games and Ryder Games. In this game, you take on a team of private investigators traveling the city, uncovering clues, and ultimately solving cases filled with mystic and arcane elements. Ryder Games and Evan Derrick himself already have a hit with Detective City of Angels, and Lucky Duck Games have also had hits with games like Chronicles of Crime and Destinies. So both of these companies together have some great pedigree in this storytelling, crime-solving kind of games. So join me down at the table to see how this one plays, and then meet me back up top, and I'll let you know what I think about this game. Sorry, just one more thing before we head to the table. I do need to mention, it is mentioned in the name of the video, but I should say it out loud here as well. There is a disclaimer. This game does have some mature language and themes, so if that is going to bother you, you probably want to skip the playthrough, but I wouldn't mind for you to come back at the end and listen to my final thoughts. So hopefully I'll catch you then. All right, so here we are all set up for a solo playthrough, or in this case, I'm going to be doing a two-handed solo playthrough of The Dark Quarter. I've gone ahead and chosen two characters. Let me introduce the two characters first, and then I'll explain the rest of the setup. The first character we'll be using today is John Robichaux. And it says, things that were once said about John Robichaux, the most promising homicide detective I've ever seen. John's fine at parties, but have you met Maria? Damn charming woman. How the hell did he punch that far above his weight? If I didn't like him so much, I'd be jealous of his career, wife, talent, shit. I basically want to be John Robichaux. Then Maria was murdered. Her case went unsolved. Robichaux was let go for unresolved anger issues. Amongst other things, his life fell apart. Things that are said about John Robichaux now, a tragedy would happen to Maria, but no less tragic would happen to John. Shame he couldn't pull himself together. I heard he threw in with the Beaumont agency. That man could solve any crime blindfolded and handcuffed, but now, he's broken and used up. Bottom of the barrel, even the likes of Beaumont. Who? Robichaux? You mean John I lost my shit Robichaux? He's still alive? The other character we're going to be using today is Constance Moreau. You can see her right here. Take a look at her backstory as well. Constance Moreau was forced to grow up overnight when her mother was killed in a car accident. She might have been destined to live life in the shadow of grief. Instead, she turned hard as steel and developed a will to survive that was frequently terrifying. She discovered magic as well as a talent for it, obsessively throwing herself into the study of the arcane. By the age of 12, she had the abilities of a voodooan, thrice her age. At 15, she summoned her first Loa. At 18, she was regarded as one of the most powerful magicians in all of Dark Orleans. The world was hers, which made her decision to join the Beaumont agency that much more surprising. Them ragtag freaks, her guardian, Mama Belle, said when Moreau told her. But why not? She wanted to flex her arcane muscles, and no one ran into more wild and crazy shit than Beaumont agents. Vampires, werewolves, and diablos, oh my. Constance Moreau couldn't imagine anything more exciting. So I said we're going to be using these two characters for our playthrough today. So in the setup, each of the characters is going to get their stack of ability cards, these markers for specific locations that will be character specific later in the game, the miniature for that character, 2 regular dice, and 3 effort dice. So she has all of those things set up over here as well. The other things you see on the table are the main map of New Orleans. These are location tiles that will come out as we play. These are decks of item cards. These are going to be story items, and these will be consumable items. We've got experience tokens here. We've got locations that will come out, or NPC characters that will come out throughout the gameplay. We've got these location markers up here. And then we've got points of interest markers here, with the final point of interest that's going to trigger the end game later in the gameplay right there. Now this video is going to be a little bit different than my normal videos because this is a Kickstarter preview. This is also a story-based game. So I didn't want to play the game before recording the video because I didn't want anything spoiled for myself while I played through. I wanted to make sure that all of my decisions were real decisions as I was playing through the game. So what that means is I haven't played the game yet. I've read the rules. I understand the rules. It seems to play quite a bit like Destinies, which I've played a lot of, so I don't expect any problems going through the game. But I haven't touched the game itself yet. So what I'm going to do is, instead of try and teach you the game now, there's not a whole lot of heavy mechanism here, as this is a story and a deduction sort of investigation style game. So I'm going to go ahead and load the app. and we'll go through the setup of the app together, and then we'll just jump right into the play, and I'll explain things that I'm doing or how things work as I'm going through those things. All right, so you see on the screen now, Chapter 1, the breaking. And as I said already, we're going to be using Jean Robichaux and Constance Moreau in this playthrough, so I'm going to select the two of them and click OK. All right, so here we got Jean Robichaux, and it tells us our starting skill levels. So I'm going to take these cubes, green, red, purple, and yellow, and put them out on his player mat, matching where it tells me to put them. So first we're going to do Talent 4, 7, 9, and then Combat 5, 7, 11, Arcane 7, 10, and 11, and finally Charisma 5, 8, and 11. And then it also tells me I have the starting item Crowbar number 6. So we're going to go into our consumable deck and find item number 6. All right, so item number 6 is this crowbar. I can scan it during the game if I want to use it for something, but also I can discard this item during gameplay to add 3 to a dice roll in any of my combat tests. So I'm going to put that here, and we'll have that for later in the game. All right, now we've got Constance Moreau, same thing, setting up her talents, combats, arcane, and charisma skills. We start with talent at 6, 8, and 11, and then combat at 8, 10, and 11, arcane at 5, 6, 11, and then charisma at 5, 8, 11. And Constance is going to start with Grigri, which is consumable item number 2. All right, so here is the Grigri. Again, we can scan it for whatever its use is during the game, but we can also discard this card to add 1 auto success in any arcane test. All right, then we move on to the next step. It asks me, did every player take their starting items and set their skills? Yes, we did, so I will hit yes. All players set up. It says, find your 2 ability cards marked on the back with an S icon. These are your character's starting ability cards. Select one of these 2 starting cards and unlock it for free. And then combine all my remaining ability cards. Together they form a deck of ability cards which can be unlocked throughout the game by spending experience points. So let's go ahead and do that. First, for Jean Robichaux, he's got 2 starting skill possibilities, the Pugilist or the Keen Eye. So let's take a look at these and we'll choose one of these to start. The Pugilist says, during combat tests for each of these star symbols that I roll, which normally don't do anything unless you have a card that triggers them in some way, I'm going to set that die to a 1 and roll another additional exhausted die. And I'll explain how those dice work in a minute. But setting a die to 1 is going to be the lowest value. So it's not super helpful, but it's better than a nothing. And it also allows me to roll 1 more die. So this is going to help me pass combat tests quite a bit. The next one, Keen Eye. And this one's going to be during those talent tests, which are going to be my investigation or observation kind of tests. I'm going to instantly add 2 to my dice roll result. And why don't we pause here just for a second. I'll explain a little bit more as we get into the actual skill tests, but I want to explain what these skills mean and how a test works. On every turn when we take an action, we might get skill tests that we have to pass as part of that action. And for every skill test, we're always going to be rolling these 2 regular dice. And we'll be rolling as many of these dice that we want to, so long as they are refreshed in our available pool of dice. Every turn we will be getting one of those back, and other abilities and things will bring them back as well. On the big normal dice, we've got 1, 3, 2, 3, 4, and a star. And again, I just showed you that star only works if you have some kind of special ability that triggers the star. Otherwise, it does nothing. And on the effort dice, we're going to have numbers as well. 1, 2, 3, 2. This symbol here, and a star. So instead of the 4 on this die, we have this symbol. And this symbol is going to be an automatic success. So the way this is going to work is we're going to roll all our dice, and we'll add up all of the numbers together. And then we'll check those numbers based on whichever of the 4 skills we're testing. So for example, if I was testing that talent skill, and I rolled an 8, everything that's less than the 8 on my board will count as a success. So again, if I rolled an 8, I would have 2 successes. Plus, if I had rolled that auto success symbol, I would then add 1 additional success to those successes. I'll put that into the app, and the app will tell me what happens based on the number of successes that we've had. So you'll see how that works as we get into the game, but I just wanted to explain that so you can see sort of a little bit of my thought process to why I would choose one or the other of these two cards. So again, Keen Eye is instantly just going to add 2 to all of my investigation and observation kind of tests, because he is an ex-detective, right? And Pugilist is going to help me potentially do better in combat. It gives me a +1 for a star, and also lets me roll an additional exhausted die. But to use this, I have to have rolled a star first, and then I'm basing it on another roll, which could be another 1, which wouldn't be great, although that would be an auto 2, whereas this just gives me the auto 2. I think I'm going to take this because I'm a little bit more excited about the sort of puzzly, investigative nature of the game, so I'm going to start with the Keen Eye ability, and then I'll add this back into my stack. And these are all going to be abilities that we can unlock later. So if I have a chance to unlock them, then I will show you some of the other cards in that deck. All right, coming back over to Constance Moreau, let's pull out her 2 starter cards. And she's got Well-Rounded and Touched by Magic. So let's have a look and see what those 2 do. Touched by Magic during an arcane test, I'm going to count each star as an auto success. That's pretty cool. Or Well-Rounded, I get to place an extra cube in the 7th skill slot on either my Talent, Arcane, or Charisma track. So I could give her the potential to have another success on another track. I've already got him doing good with that green investigation, sort of observation talent track. I could boost her Arcane or her Charisma track using this. But I think I like this idea of a possible auto success on Arcane test. So I'm going to take that Touched by Magic, and we'll add that again back into her stack. All right, once we've done that, we're going back into the app. I'll hit OK, and we get our story, which says, New Orleans, 1981. It was the hottest August on record in New Orleans. Humidity covered the city like a mass of rancid honey. Jazz riffs leaked out of the French Quarter, valiantly trying to pierce the sweltering air. People stumbled from street to street and parish to parish, as if in a sweat-drenched trance. If ever the city lived up to its ancient nickname, the Wet Grave, it was in the summer of '81. The murder was brutal and archaic. The victim, the mayor's chief assistant, Frank Boisseau, was powerful and important. It was a perfect storm of bad juju from the moment a patrolman came upon the gory display in Louis Armstrong Park. Reporters and rubberneckers swarmed the crime scene almost before NOPD could rope it off. The detective in charge took one look, vomited into the bushes for the first time in his career, and said out loud, to no one in particular, "This is going to hang on our necks like a fucking millstone if we don't put it to bed immediately." A call was made for outside help, a call no one really wanted to make, but in this instant the NOPD wasn't above begging. Thus, the Beaumont Agency was asked to consult on what would become the first of the Congo murders. So you can see here game progress is saved automatically at the start of each in-game day. And then you can load games later by saying resume last game. This is very helpful if you can't finish a session or finish an entire story in a session and you want to save it and come back later. The app does save it. So all you'd have to do is basically take a picture of your table and you can come back and put everything back out the way that it was. All right, so now it's going to have me set up the game. I sort of did a little bit of this already. Placed the city board on the table. We've done that already. All right, then here we go. The only true safe place in all of Dark Orleans, as long as Sofia Romero isn't pissed at you. Beaumont agents know better than to bother their boss, causing her anger. When lost, this is where you can receive a hint at the expense of your final reward. Place, location, or NPC 1, Beaumont Agency as indicated. Unfortunately, my prototype copy is missing this one token of all of the things, so I'm just going to use a regular point of interest to mark this off on my map. And we'll just have to remember that that's the Beaumont Agency. In fact, I'm going to turn it sideways so it looks different than all of the other points of interest as we play moving forward. All right, I'll be brief. Here's the evidence file, straight from the NOPD, but it's as thin as my fucking patience. So get to work and track down who did Boisseau in and why they chose to do it like this. Romero returned to her work, dismissing the agents. Take the evidence file 1 card from the story deck and place it in the Beaumont inventory. So in addition to each of our characters having their own inventory, we're also going to have a Beaumont inventory, which is sort of the inventory of the agency that we're working for, and we're all sharing those cards. So on our turn, we can use our own card, but we can also use any of the shared cards from the inventory. So I'm just going to take this card and set it out at the top of the screen. We are a little bit tight on space today, so I'm going to sort of move things around as need be. So we've got here the evidence file for the case. And I think I'm just going to set this up here off to the side. And we'll pull some of these things off camera to make extra space if I need to as we play. Now, before we do continue into this playthrough, I do want to mention, I don't know how long this is going to take to play through, and I don't want this video to end up being huge. I also don't want to spoil absolutely everything about this introductory case. So we'll play for about an hour, and then at that point, I'll find a sort of good place to stop and cut. And then I'll play through the rest on my own, and I'll come back with my thoughts afterwards. All right, now it also tells me now I need to place all of the character miniatures right here at the Beaumont agency. All right, now we got to put out Congo Square. It's located at the heart of Louis Armstrong Park. It's the scene of Boisseau's brutal murder. So we've got these location tokens. They're double-sided. One side is this sort of creamy white color, and the other side is this dark color. The dark color is going to show us the locations that haven't been explored yet, and then when we go there, they'll flip over to remind us that we've already been there before. So this is going to go down in the park right here. Next, City Hall. City Hall is the seat of power in New Orleans and the former employer of our victim, Frank Boisseau. So City Hall's up here. All right, so it's John Robichaux's turn, and you see here already right there on the screen, it tells you refresh an effort die. So I again start with my regular dice on every turn, and now I'm refreshing one of these. So I have one of them available for any skill tests that I might take. And then starting us off with a little bit of story, it says, John Robichaux took one look at the case file that the NOPD sent over and nearly passed out. Boisseau had been strapped spread-eagled to an old wooden cartwheel. Then his arms and legs were broken. No, broken was whitewashing it. His limbs had been broken in 36 places, and what remained of them was twisted in an unnatural, grotesque manner. But it wasn't the violent photographs that made Robichaux's stomach twist into 1,000 knots. He'd seen plenty during his decade as a homicide detective to rival this. It was the startling similarities to Maria's murder. Almost 2 years earlier, his wife had been killed in the same horrifying manner. It was called breaking the wheel. Robichaux now knew an archaic manner of execution not seen since the 18th century. And now a second killing with the same pattern had fallen right into his lap. All right, so we're putting out a new location now, I guess, triggered by Jean Robichaux's own story. This is the Robichaux family house, closed shut and empty for nearly 2 years. And that goes over here like that. All right, so it is my turn. And on your turn, there are 4 things that you need to do in order. The first thing is mandatory, which we've already done, and that's refresh one of our effort dice. So we did that. Then the next 2 steps are optional. The first one is that we can unlock an ability card. In order to unlock the ability cards that I showed you earlier, in the top left corner here, you can see a number of symbols. Those are experience points. So if I had 4 experience points during this part of my turn, I could trade them in to unlock that particular ability. Looks like all of the level 1s cost 4, and that other starting one I didn't take costs 3 experience. Experience points are also useful because we can use experience points to refresh additional effort dice before a skill test to increase our chances of rolling many more successes. After that, you can then scan one item card in the app if you want to. Most of the time, the reason you'll be scanning item cards will be items that you sort of found during the game. So for example, right now, I think I'm going to scan this evidence file to see if it tells me more about things that we found at the crime scene. But likely I'm headed to the crime scene to find out more in a minute anyway. But the final step of a turn is to interact with one of these points of interest, either a location or a point of interest like this on the board. Okay, inside the location, you'll see in just a minute, if I click on a location in the app, it's going to zoom in on that location. We're going to put out some of these tiles for the location, and then there will be points of interest within the location that we can choose to interact with. So again, on your turn, you have to refresh one die if you can. Then you have the option to upgrade or to purchase a new ability. You can scan one item and only one item, and then you can interact with one point of interest. Now, when you interact with a point of interest, there's going to be story. There might be some skill checks. There might be some things that happen without skill checks that change the story in some way. And we'll see how that works in just a second. All right, so back to the app now. We're going to pick a place to go. And I think it probably makes most sense for us to focus on the crime scene first to find out more information about what it is exactly that we're looking for. So I'm going to go to Congo Square. And it tells us again, it reminds us what that is. This is the scene of the brutal murder. That's why I chose to go there. Do we go there? Yes, we go there. All right, so now we're going to turn that to make it white so we can see that we've been there already. And it's going to ask us to pull out a location tile. It says the park was a madhouse. Throngs of people gawked at the entrance, trying to see past the crime scene tape and catch a glimpse of the grisly display deeper inside the park. Place tile 1 face up as indicated. So here we go. Here's tile 1. This is the park, this entrance to Armstrong Park. Get you a little bit closer so you can see the artwork. Really, really nice artwork here. That is Congo Square. Put that right there. At the back of the crowd, Robichaux noticed a man staring at the spectacle, not moving or saying a word. Robichaux wouldn't have noticed him if not for the fact that he was a good foot taller than anyone else present. Place 5, strange man as indicated. All right, so here we go. We've got this man here, as you saw in the app, and we'll put that out on the location right there. At the front of the crowd, guarding the crime scene tape, was a frazzled beat cop. The poor schmuck was in his early 20s, green as paint, and trying to hold back the crowd like the levees before Hurricane Betsy. To be completely frank, he wasn't faring much better than the levees did. Place 4, police officer, as indicated. All right, so he's out there on the board now, and that is that. So now I have to choose one of those two people at that location to interact with. And I think I'm going to interact with that strange man because I'm worried that if I don't, he's going to run away before I get there. Yes, visit the strange man. Robichaux approached the tall man casually. What's the city coming to, am I right? The man looked down at him as if acknowledging a gnat and then returned his gaze to the spectacle. Dark days are upon us, he said in the deepest bass voice that Robichaux had ever heard. The man was quite frankly terrifying. He wouldn't be easy to intimidate. All right, so here we've got the ability to do a skill test of charisma. That's shown by that yellow crown there. It says, despite his initial feeling of talking to a statue, John tried to get a conversation going. And yeah, I might as well go for it. I don't have any special skill in charisma, and my numbers aren't great. I've got a 5, an 8, and an 11, so I need to roll higher than those numbers to get successes. We are going to refresh the die every turn. I might as well use all 3. So let me say this again. When you have a skill test, you get to choose how many of the dice you're going to roll for that skill. You will always roll the 2 regular, and you can choose to roll the additional die or any additional dice that you have available to you if you choose to do so. And yes, I think I do choose to do so. So I'm going to roll those 3 dice. And we've got a 3 and 2 stars. Unfortunately, stars don't do anything for me. And rolling just a 3 gets me nothing because I needed a 5 to get my first success. So, unfortunately, we have no successes here. We select it in the app, and we select 0 successes. Now, because I didn't get any successes, I'm only allowed to ask him 1 question. If I had gotten more successes, it would have given me the ability to ask him more of these questions and learn a bit more about the information. Sorry, I forgot to move my mini there. I should be on the board with the man at the park. All right, so because of my poor success or lack of success in that test, I can only ask one question. You'll see in the first option here that there's a little sort of QR code behind the speech bubble, and that means that if I want to click that, I'm going to have to scan some kind of item here. So in this case, I'd basically be asking him about something that I have. I don't have any information or any interesting items here, and I just now realized I forgot to scan that evidence file before my turn started. So it doesn't really do me any good to scan that for him. I don't think, again, I forgot to scan it at the start of my turn, so I'm not sure what's in there. But I don't think this strange man is going to have any information about this. So I'm going to go with that second question because it seems like the most important question. Who are you and why are you interested in this? My name is my own and my business the same. So now I have the option of coaxing, intimidating, or dropping the subject. Now, this is going to come up in a lot of the conversations in this game. If I'm going to coax, it's sort of using my charisma, using my talent to talk him down and convince him to talk to me. Or if I try and intimidate, I'm going to be using my strength and my talents in that manner to try and push him into talking to me. And certain characters are going to react in different ways depending on sort of the type of personality they have and how receptive they are to these two different sort of personality types. In addition, if you push them too hard, they could become hostile, at which point you're going to have to sort of talk them back down or they'll refuse to answer any more questions for you. However, I'm John Robichaux. I've got some brawn to me. I'm a little bit beefier. I'm a little bit tough. I don't think I'm going to be the smooth talker, so I'm going to push him. I'm going to intimidate him and see what happens. Whoops. The man's lips turned up in a silent snarl. My patience has run dry with you, little pest. Get away with you. The character's hostility has increased. So now you see I don't have any more options to interact with this man, and I'm going to then just have to end my turn. And we switch over to Constance Moreau. So back on the table, I have my regular dice. I'm going to refresh one effort die like it says to do in the app. And then we'll go into the app for a second to choose where we're going. Now I did forget to scan that evidence file in my previous turn, so I am going to have her do that. So under that picture, we're going to click the QR code. And we want to scan the evidence file. So I'm going to scan that QR code there by putting it against the camera, and then we'll just touch the screen to scan. The case file from the NOPD was thin. A few preliminary crime scene photographs that had been rushed to the developer, as well as some brief notes on Boisseau, were all that was inside. It would not be a substitute for actual eyes on the ground at Congo Square. All right, so I'm going to send her to Congo Square as well, because I would like to see what she can do. I'm going to have her talk. We'll see. Let's go there and see what happens. If the man's still there, she might try her luck with that man. But if not, I'll probably have her talk to the police officer. So we're going to move her mini over there as well, and we'll see what happens. Click on Congo Square. Strange man is still there. Let's talk to him again and see what we can do with her. All right, so the exact same options as they were with John. Let's click that, and we're going to roll a charisma check. I'm going to use my effort die again. So we roll. I've got a 2 and a 3 is a 5. And I got that special symbol that's an auto success. So with a 5, I get 1 success. And with that symbol, I get my second success. So back to the app. We're going to put in 2 successes. Confirm. And now I get to ask him 2 questions. And I think just to break the ice, I'm going to ask him, how the hell did you get so tall? The man smiled briefly, the first display of emotion Moreau had seen, and then looked her in the eyes. By the grace of the Almighty, little girl, I'm tall because Elohim wanted me to be tall. So I'm going to coax him. No, that was supposed to be an icebreaker anyway. I'm just going to drop the subject. That's not important. The real importance is now the next question. We'll see if because I did that, it convinces him to talk to me. But let's see what happens. The same thing as before. My name is my own and my business the same. I'm going to try and coax it out of him this time. She's a little bit more of a smooth talker, I hope. Her skills are basically exactly the same as his, but moving forward, that's what I want to sort of aim for as we play through it. So she's going to coax him. And he says, it bears repeating that these are dark days for our city. As a servant of Cazador Inc., I'm here to bear witness. The man considered Moreau carefully. I sense the same concern in you, so I give you this one morsel. Voodoo magic is involved. So I uncovered a new lead in the case, a mysterious organization known as Cazador Inc. and I get 1 experience point for that. It says, it seemed the arcane was involved in the entire case. Moreau knew someone who might help in this field. All right, so we just added a new spot, Dixieland Drugstore. It says Dixieland Drugstore was a place well known to the Beaumont agents. It's an institution with all manner of the arcane for sale and also a good place for asking questions about any magical funny business. So I'm going to place NPC 2 on the map, Dixieland Drugstore down here over like this. Before I forget, while we're on the table, I'm going to get one of those experience points for Constance. That die is now done. Okay. And as you can see, Strange Man is done talking to me. That's all that I can do. End my turn. And we go back to John Robichaux. So quickly on the table, we're going to refresh that 1 effort die. And we'll think about what it is that we're going to do. Now, we are at Congo Square over here already. I don't think the Strange Man has anything more to tell us about except that he's part of this weird organization that's sort of following things and wants to know more information. We're going to have to find out more about them. We might be able to ask at the drugstore about that. But for right now, I think it's important that we talk to the cop at the park to figure out what he knows. So in the app, we're going back into Congo Square. And now this time we are going to be talking to the police officer. It says, at the front of the crowd, guarding the crime scene tape, was a frazzled beat cop. The poor schmuck was in his early 20s, green as paint and trying to hold back the crowd like the levees before Hurricane Betsy. To be completely frank, he wasn't very much better than the levees did. Robichaux forced his way through the crowd and flashed his badge. I'm with the Beaumont Agency. I need to get in to look at the crime scene. The cop barely glanced at the badge, frantically making sure no one forced their way past the tape. You and every other rubbernecker here. Beat it, pal. I don't have time for your bullshit. So I've got the ability to do a charisma check to take a closer look at the badge run I'm expected. Or I can do an arcane check that says Robichaux had a gree-gree that would get him past this shitheel in no time. Now, Moreau has the gree-gree. And looking at my skills back on the table for a second, we can see that his ability for charisma is much better than his ability for arcane. So we're going to go for the charisma option. So back in the app, I picked that. And as we saw, it is going to be a roll for successes. So I'm going back to the table. I am going to roll my 1 effort die. We roll all 3 dice. We get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Unfortunately, the next die is an 8, or sorry, the next cube is an 8. So we're going to get 1 skill success. So back to the app. 1 success. The cop looked closer and something like realization flicked across his face. I remember the captain saying something about you guys coming in for a consult. Hurry back before I change my mind. All right, so we're removing the police officer from the table. And then back to the app. It looks like we're expanding on our location. With the gawking crowd held back at the entrance, it was quieter here, but not by much. Police swarmed over the grounds like ants. Beat cops, plainclothes detectives, and forensic photographers. I'm going to move that over, and we're going to add in Congo Square Tile 2, which is the crime scene itself. And then inside that new tile, it says, 1 detective in particular stood out, apparently the king of this circus. He was almost certainly the lead detective of the case. So we're looking for a Tile 6, Detective LeBlanc. And we'll put him out here on that board. We also have a point of interest. At the center of the square where the murder had taken place lay Boisseau's body. So I'm going to put that out here in that crime scene area. And now it is my turn. Now, we know that Robichaux has this keen eye ability that's going to add 2 to dice roll results for his tests on sort of investigation and observation, those talent tests. So I might hold off on that crime scene itself for his next turn and instead have her talk to somebody, perhaps that investigator over there. So let's see what happens. We're going to end his turn. It's Constance's turn again. It says to refresh an effort die. Now we get to see where we want to go. I do want to send her to that drugstore to find out more later. But for right now, I want her to stay at the Congo Square and talk to that new officer Detective LeBlanc. So we're going to click on him. The detective looked up as Moreau approached him. You from Beaumont? Moreau nodded. I'm LeBlanc, and I'm the lead of this shit show. And just so we're crystal clear, I didn't want y'all here. But that call was made above my pay grade. Ask your questions, take a look-see, and get the hell out of my crime scene. A friendly sort. All right, so I could give him a gift if I had something. I don't have anything but that gree-gree, and I don't think that's going to be a gift that he wants. So we're going to try and talk to him, again, using our charisma. I'm going to test that charisma. I'm going to roll my effort die that I've got this turn. We roll that, I've got 7 plus a star, and a star does nothing for me. So a 7 gets me 1 success, which lets me, in this case, ask 2 questions. So I'm going to ask him about any leads first. Do you have any leads? Just because someone with more brass on their lapel than me wants you here doesn't mean you get my Cliff's Notes on this case. Now he can coax or intimidate. I don't think he's going to be intimidated by me, so I'm going to coax him. Or not. Jesus, you Beaumont types can't get a clue, can you? Character's hostility has increased. All right, so his hostility is going up, which means we need to be careful because if we push him too hard, he's going to shut down completely, and that's going to be a problem. Now, we know that the strange man is from Cazador Inc., so, yeah, I'm going to push more about Cazador Inc. and not the strange man. He says, they're the most dangerous assholes are the ones with a divine mandate. I keep as far from those zealots as I can. So we're going to try and intimidate him. Because coaxing didn't work last time. I don't know if he can be intimidated, but let's try. A vein in LeBlanc's head begins to throb. My blood pressure can't handle dumbasses like you trying to push me around. Beat it, fuckstick. The character's hostility has increased. Yep, here we go. Moreau had pushed LeBlanc too far. Steam was practically coming out of his ears. I fucking warned you. Now get the hell out of my face. He wouldn't be answering any more questions until someone calmed him down. All right, so now he's hostile and would not answer any questions. So we got to calm him down if I want to talk to him again. But for now, let's go back to John's turn. We're going to refresh that 1 die. It says, Robichaud knew he should head to his old house. But, as often in his life, work came first. Or maybe I'm just a fucking coward, he thought, unable to set foot back there. All right, so that means this turn I do want to explore the body, so he can do the investigation tech with his bonus from his ability. But then I probably am then going to head back up to his house and see what's going on there. All right, so first we're going back to Congo Square to check out the body, the victim. All right, when Robichaud stepped up onto the stage, his knees almost gave out. This is how Maria had been found. This is what they did to her. It was almost too much for him to bear. He swallowed hard and steeled himself. Oh, so we got another place in our scene. We are running out of a bit of space, but that's okay. So we're going to place tile 7 as shown. I'm going to put it down here just because I don't have the space to slide it in sideways. An old cartwheel, the kind that would have borne wagons across the plains hundreds of years ago, was in the exact center of the stage. Boisseau was on it, spread-eagled, his hand and feet lashed to the wheel with some kind of white fibrous material. His eyes were wide open, and his face in a frozen rictus of agony, and it was not difficult to see why. The man's arms and legs were bent and twisted like wet noodles. The bones must have been pulverized to dust for them to turn that way. He looked like a marionette at rest, his limp limbs just waiting for the jerk of a puppet master's hands to spring to life. Blood was everywhere. All right, so we are going to examine the scene. I do have that keen eye ability, which means we get to roll those 3 dice, and we're going to add 2 to whatever we roll. So I got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Plus 2 is 11. So we're getting 3 successes this time, which is awesome. And because of that, I get to take 3 actions out of the 4 listed here. And it looks like I can take a look at his tied hands, his massacred head, the symbols written in blood, or the wooden wheel. I'm going to start with the top 3. But if something changes or something tells me something interesting that I might want to take a look at the wheel, I will. But the wheel could tell me Something about who's responsible for this. All right, anyway, let's take a look at the symbols first. Written in Bossuet's blood was a series of symbols and lines that looked, at least to Robichaud, like hieroglyphics. The bottom half of the symbols was smudged, however. Pulling out his notebook, Robichaud quickly sketched the portion of the symbols that he could make out clearly. We're going to take the symbol card from the story deck and place it in the inventory, and I get 1 experience point for that. So back to the table, here's an experience point, and we got the symbol that looks like that. So again, we can take a look at any of these items at the start of our turn, but also this might be helpful to show somebody later on when we're talking to them. For example, when we go down here to that drugstore to speak with the lady who knows about the arcane. That's probably a good thing to do. Back to the app. We can check out 2 more things. I definitely want to look at his head, because his head is not going to be related to breaking his bones around the wheel. Something happened intentionally to his head. Up close, his face was even more horrifying. His eyes were scarlet from burst blood vessels, and Robichaud could barely see his pupils. His mouth was open in an eternal, unending scream that Robichaud could almost hear in his own head. Looking closer, he saw something lodged deep in his throat. That's interesting. Well, I still only have 1 action remaining. I could go back in later and start looking at some of this stuff. But for right now, I do want to take that object out of his throat and figure out what that is, because that's more important, I think, than tied hands or the wheel. So again, I don't have my effort dice this time. We are rolling 2 dice, and again, this is still one of those talent tests, so I get to add 2 to whatever I roll. I rolled 4 plus 2 is 6, which unfortunately is only 1 success. So we put 1 success into the app. Oh, looks like we got okay. Robichaud made sure NLPD's forensic team wasn't looking, then reached deftly in with the tweezers and removed a small, tightly rolled parchment. Take note 4 card from the story deck and place it in the inventory, and gain 1 more experience point. And with that, there's nothing else for him to do. I'm going to go ahead and end the turn, but let's finish up with what we just got. We want card 4. And card 4 is this note. That's in French, c'est la justice et la pour tous ses descendants. I don't speak French, but I guess we can search the internet for it. But also, at the start of a round, we can scan one of these things. So I might wait till his next turn, scan it, because he might speak some French, and that'll save me some time. And then before I forget, he gets 1 more experience point. All right, Constance's turn. We start by refreshing 1 effort die. And I think I'm going to give up on that detective, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to convince him to talk to me. So I'm going to send her to the drugstore to find out more about those symbols. But the first thing I want to do is scan those symbols and see if they mean anything to her. So we'll start with a scan. We're going to scan this symbol right here. It says the symbol found next to Boisseau's body, hastily scrawled onto a piece of notebook paper, was incomplete. Clearly it held great meaning for whoever had exacted such stunning violence upon Boisseau, but that meaning would remain cloudy until the other portion was found. So that may not be useful to us yet anyway, but we're going to go down and head over to that drugstore to find out more about what she might know. All right, so it says, the Dixieland drugstore was packed to the brim with voodoo bric-a-brac, shrunken heads, love potions, spell books, I Heart Voodoo t-shirts, and other curiosities. Everything on the shelf was innocuous. The real voodoo objects, powerful and dangerous, were out of sight behind the counter, guarded by Madame Babette Bordeaux, whose family ran the place for decades. Hello, Constance. It's been a while. You shouldn't be such a stranger, she smiled. Now, what can Dixieland do for you today? So you see here at the top, it says Moreau is interested in today's behind-the-counter wares. There's a dollar symbol next to it. This means that I can buy something here at the drugstore. And in order to do that, you need to have money cards, and we don't have any money yet. So there's nothing I can buy here right now because I don't have any cash to do that. So I could give her some kind of gift. She might like the gree-gree, but I'm going to hold on to it because I would like to have it for my arcane tests. So my last option then is to start a conversation with her using my charisma. It says, Madame Bordeaux was an expert on all things voodoo or arcane and would gladly answer any questions. All right, so back to the table. We are going to do that check. I am going to use that 1 effort die. Do I want to spend an experience to add another die? No, that's fine. We're okay with just these 3. We roll. I got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We are again 1 short of the second success, so we get only 1 success, which is going to let us ask 2 questions. And I do want to ask her about the symbol. Yeah, let's go ahead and start by asking about that symbol. All right, so we're going to select that symbol. She says, this is part of a vive, a symbol used to summon a loa, a voodoo spirit. You would need to find me a second part. All right, so somebody's summoning something. Assuming that magic is real in this world, somebody summoned something that did that damage to that guy. And I don't think she's going to be the type that we need to intimidate, so I'm going to coax her to see if she'll tell me anything more. She says, the loa are the invisibles, the link between humanity and the supreme creator. Some are good, some are bad, and some are in between. But summoning one can be very dangerous and should never be done lightly. With only part of the symbol, it's impossible to know which loa this belongs to. We got 1 question left. Let's ask about Frank Boisseau. She said she doesn't know who it is. And I don't think she's lying to me, so we're going to move on. And that is the end of our turn. All right, back to John. I would like to investigate some more. We are going to refresh a die. I know he wants to go home. We'll send him home soon. But right now I want to make sure that we're investigating. So we're going to continue with our investigation. Oh, somebody's new. Casket girl. The smell of blood in crowds tended to attract the casket girls. Beaumont agents knew a vampire when they saw one. All right, so we're placing 18, the casket girl, onto the board. Adding her over here at the entrance to the park. I don't think I care. Whoops, he should be at the crime scene. I don't think I care about her right now. Looky-loos don't mean anything to me. Let me go back and finish examining the body, and then we'll think about going back to his house. All right, so back to the victim. Examine the scene again. We are going to roll all 3 of these for the investigation, so we get as much time as we need. I got 3, 6, and a star. The star doesn't do anything, but I do get to add 2 because of my ability, which gets me 2 successes. So we're going to start by looking at his hands. Rigor mortis had set in, and Boisseau's hand was frozen in the shape of a claw. Robichaud looked closer at the fibers binding the body to the wheel. He wasn't a rope expert by any means, but they were made of a material he'd never seen before. Interesting. Do I care about the wheel or do I care about the rope? The wheel is interesting, but I think strange rope might be more important, so let's do that. I'm going to try and cut that rope, and I am going to use one of my experience points this time to get an extra die. So I can roll that effort die again. Again, this is an investigation test, means I add 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great, so that's 3 successes. Robichaud snagged a coil of rope without anyone noticing. Take the strand of rope card from the story deck and place it in the Beaumont inventory and gain an experience point. All right, so I get that point back, and I get the piece of rope, which is this one right here, and that goes into our Beaumont inventory, and that's his turn. So we end the turn, and now it's Constance's turn. She doesn't have anything left to do at the drugstore. She could go back to the park to try again with that police officer or with the new casket girl, or she might as well go and check out Boisseau's house at City Hall, or Boisseau's office at City Hall, to see if there's anything there. So let's send her up that way. Before that, though, we've got this new story. It says, Constance was distracted. It stemmed from the urgent note she'd received from Mama Belle, the voodooing who had raised her after her mother was killed in a car accident, and who had taught her everything she knew about the arcane. The note simply read, "Little Constance, come at once. We must speak." She never received anything like this before. This must be something urgent. So we're adding Mama Belle's house down here at the bottom of the map. And it says that it's urgent. And I didn't have anything specific that I needed to go to. This is interesting. Okay, back to the app for a second. You'll see at the bottom of the location, there's a tag, a purple tag, and Constance's color is purple. So we're going to go back to the board. Oops. And we will add that tag right there. So that means that only Constance can go to that location. John Robichaux has no reason to go there and actually physically cannot go there in the app. And it seems to be a rush. I wasn't really planning on specifically doing something this turn anyway, so why not? We're going to send her to that location. And now let's go back to the app and see what happens. We flip that on the board. And we've got our new location, Mama Bell's house, number 12. I don't have anything at the top. Actually, I don't have anything down here at the bottom either. And this is sort of just on camera. So I'm going to put this down here. Mama Bell's house is where she is now. It says Mama Bell's house. The house that Moreau grew up in was a plain white clapboard in Marrero. Nothing on the outside indicated that one of the New Orleans' most powerful voodooans lived inside. So we've got a photograph on the wall that only Constance can look at, which seems obvious since only Constance was allowed to come to this location. We've got Mama Bell. Mama Bell was sitting in her favorite rocking chair looking out the window. Place 16, Mama Bell. And again, mark this as only Constance. All right, so I can take a look at the photograph, which said, an old photograph, the only photo she'd ever seen in her mother, hung on the far wall. Or I can talk to Mama Bell. Since we're here to do a letter that Mama Bell sent me, I'm going to click on Mama Bell, and let's talk and see what she's like. There you are, child. There are things we need to discuss, things it's time that you knew. But first, there's a box on the table that is for you. It was your mother's. I was supposed to give it to you on your 18th birthday, but I was afraid. It's yours now. Look at it, and then we will talk. All right, so now we've got a new point of interest on the map, the box. A flimsy cardboard box with Constance hastily scrawled on the side in big black letters. Then again marked as a Moreau location. And that is the end of my turn because we can only do one thing per turn, so I'm going to end my turn there. Nice thing is we didn't roll any dice. It means next turn we're going to have 2 effort dice, but now we're switching to John. We're going to refresh 1 die. Robichaux's beeper was going off. It was the agency. He hit a payphone and called into the office. Update, the voice at the other end said immediately. Sophie Romero was not known for small talk. Robichaux filled her in on where the investigation was and then steeled himself for the response. Time is running out, Robichaux. I've got the NIPD breathing down my neck for an update on Boisseau, and we're working on it. Isn't going to fucking cut it next time. Is that goddamn crystal clear? Robichaux confirmed that yes, that was goddamn crystal clear. Tirade over, Sophie continued. Do you need help, or can you get your fucking shit together and handle things on your own? Asking for help will count as taking a hint. And I'm going to say no, we can handle this from here. I don't want a hint. And that sounds like we really need to speed things up, but I don't think so. Before we do anything, though, I do need to scan that note because I still haven't checked to see what that means. And I did find it in his pocket, so let's do that. All right, it says Robichaux's French was rusty, but you could see that it was something about justice and descendants. Yeah, that much I knew. Great. He would need to ask someone who spoke French to fully translate it. All right. So then I think, I don't know, I feel like I need to rush this investigation, but his house is really pulling to him. I'm going to take 1 turn to go to the Robichaux house, and then we'll change things up from there. So we're going to go there. We'll flip that over. All right, it says, there was still crime scene tape across the front door. Robichaux hadn't set foot inside for over a year, living out of a cheap motel close to the agency. We'll put it there, we'll move it if we need to move it, but for right now I don't have space and that works there. Nice. All right, so we've got a photo here again for Robichaux. It says, dust coated everything, including a picture of John and Maria at the policeman's ball in 1979. Robichaux marked the point of interest. Yes, so this is going to be a Robichaux only location, which sort of makes sense as it's his house. We can check out his bedroom, which says, a door off the hallway led to their bedroom where Maria's things would be. And again, this is a John only point of interest. Through the screen door that led to the backyard, Robichaux could just make out the outline of the tool shed. He nearly vomited. He did not want to be here. So the tool shed is back here. Huh, the backyard door is not a RoboShow only option. All right, then I'm going to go into the bedroom first to start. RoboShow looked around the bedroom, the heart of their home. A fine blanket of dust lay over everything. Nothing had been touched. He could feel the absence of Maria's presence so keenly that it was almost more than he could bear. His arcane is pretty bad. If anybody's going to do that, it's her, and hers, she can't do it because this is a him-only location. But I'm going to investigate. So I'm going to roll those 3. I got a 3 plus an auto success plus 2 for my ability. 3 plus 2 is 5, so I get 1 success there and 1 auto success there. So I get 2 successes. Under the pillow was a black pendant, one of Maria's gris-gris. RoboShow had forgotten all about it. Perhaps she was watching out for him after all. So I'm going to take the black pendant card as my item. All right, so looking at the black pendant card here. Again, I can always scan it as an item. It says I can add 2 auto successes to any test if I discard it, or I can discard it and receive 4 experience during the upgrade phase. So if I want to trade it in and basically instantly get an ability, I can do that as well. But I'm going to hold on to it for a little while. And that is the end of my turn. All right, back to constants, refresh another die. I think it's pretty obvious here that we need to take a look at that box. So we're going to open the box. Inside was a single item, a small gold locket. Given the size of the box, Moreau had expected more. She picked up the box, and the locket, tarnished with age, rattled around the bottom almost comically. Now, this new symbol here, this sort of spinny arrows with the 3 dots, means just sort of continue the story. You don't have to roll for it, you don't have to test for it, but it is going to change the story in some way. When Moreau picked up the locket, she could immediately feel the magic surrounding it. She tried to pry it open, but it was held shut by an invisible force. It would require more than physical strength to open it. So we're going to take closed locket into our inventory. And then that box goes away. And then here is that closed locket. It's a story item, so there's no kind of special abilities to it. But as you just saw in the app, Moreau muttered an incantation, hoping it would open the locket. She's going to try and open the locket now. I'm going to roll for Arcane. I do have 2 effort dice here. I also have the ability that says during an Arcane test, I count each star as a success. So I'm actually going to roll all 4 of these because I really want to open this locket and see what's inside. Especially since it's from my mother, it seems very important. We roll the dice. I roll a 7, 3 plus 4 is 7, and 2 auto successes. With a 7, I'm here, which means I get these 2, so I've got 4 successes. So I put 4 into the app. With an audible snap, the locket sprung open, revealing its secrets to Moreau. Discard the closed locket, take the open locket card, and gain 1 experience point. All right, so we've taken the open locket card, just looks like that. And it says here, Le sang se souvient. And we're gonna go back to the app because it's telling us more. Inside the locket were merely a few words in French written in flowing red calligraphy. Le sang se souvient. Moreau couldn't be sure, but they may have been written in blood. And that is the end of her turn. And with that, we've been playing for almost an hour. You've seen me go to a bunch of different locations. You've seen me interact with all of the different sort of standard points of interest or NPCs in the game. You've seen how skill checks work. You've seen how I can expend experience to get dice. I haven't spent any experience to buy an ability yet, but I've already explained how that works. I'm going to show you real quick before I go, though, what the different abilities are. You already saw the pugilist ability for RoboShow, so let's take a look at his other level 1 abilities. We can start every scenario with up to 2 money consumable cards. That's not great right now in the middle of a scenario, but that would be great at the end of a scenario working towards future scenarios. And we already saw we could spend money at the drugstore when we were there before. So having money would be useful to pick up other consumable items that might help us. Here he's got Adrenaline Burst. It says if you get at least 3 successes during a test, a combat test, And then I don't have to exhaust any of these effort dice that I use. That's pretty cool because you can keep using those effort dice and keep building more and more effort dice each turn. And the last one he's got here is Stroke of Genius, which says once per game, add 2 auto successes in any test. If it's one of those talent tests, investigation or observation test, you get 3 instead of 2. That's really, really, really cool. All right, and then we'll take a look at Constance's other abilities. Again, you already saw well-rounded. Words of Power says after performing an arcane test, I can refresh one of the effort dice that I used in that test, which is nice. Persistent says during any test for each star that I rolled, I can re-roll 1 single die. And that says I can re-roll the main die as well. And it says including the one with the star result. So if I liked all of my other dice and I rolled 1 star, I could re-roll that star and hopefully get something better. That's pretty cool. And then Fast Learner, just start every scenario with 3 experience, which gets her abilities faster, which also at the end of a scenario, you can actually spend those experience points to move your skill cubes around on your board so that you can push them lower and hopefully then get better chances to get more successes in tests later on. So that's pretty cool. That pushes her to upgrading much, much faster. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and finish the game off camera, and then I'll come back here to explain anything that I didn't get a chance to show you in game, and I'll give you my thoughts about how I feel about this game. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. After I shut off the playthrough video, I continued to play through that first playthrough and ultimately finished the game with a failure, unfortunately. But then I immediately jumped back in with the other 2 characters that I didn't use in this playthrough, and I managed to play through a complete game until I ended up with a score or a finale of poor rating. So I have seen basically everything I can see in 2 normal playthroughs of the game. And aside from what you saw in the playthrough, the only 2 things that you missed out on were, the first thing is called a pivotal moment. And a pivotal moment is a special story sort of segment or decision that a specific character has in the game. So at certain points in the game, a character is going to stumble upon or come up across some piece of story that connects directly to them in a personal kind of way. And you're going to be given a short timer, I believe it was 1 minute timer, to make a decision A or B based on the situation that's being presented to you. And after you've made that decision, it's going to actually make physical changes to the storyline and the way that the game plays moving forward. So your decision is both timed and also very, very important and pivotal, hence the pivotal moment name, to the rest of the story. The other thing that you didn't get a chance to see, and actually I didn't get a chance to see in my first playthrough, I only saw it in my second playthrough, is what's called the finale. I showed you during setup that there was one of those location markers or those NPC markers that was a reversed color, right? It was the dark lantern instead of the light lantern token, and that is the finale marker. At some point in the story, if you manage to sort of trigger or figure out the main sort of point of that scenario, you're going to trigger that finale marker on the board. And then from that point on, if you select that finale marker, you will then trigger the finale. And what that means is once you've entered the finale, you're no longer moving around the map from place to place. Instead, it's going to sort of be a sequence of events that unfolds on its own, and you're just going to sort of roll for checks, make decisions in the story, and follow with that until it reaches whatever the ultimate conclusion is based on your successes and your choices. So those are the only things that you missed out in my playthrough. I apologize for not finishing the whole game, but I also didn't want to completely spoil the story since this is a very story-heavy game. So with all that being said, let's get into my thoughts on the game. Now this game, coming from Lucky Duck, if you've ever played any of the Lucky Duck games in the past, is very, very heavily influenced by both Chronicles of Crime and Destinies, right? This idea of this QR code scanning comes straight out of Chronicles of Crime. They continue to use it in Destinies, and now they continue to use it here. The first big obstacle, I guess you could say, that's going to come up in talking about this game is the usage of the app and the QR codes. I personally don't mind it. There is a whole lot of scanning in Chronicles of Crime, but when we got to Destinies and now when we get into this game here, You are scanning QR codes, right? Every time I used an item, every time I showed an item to somebody, I had to scan the QR code. But for the most part in this game, I wasn't doing that. That's only happening rarely when I need to check something or offer something or show somebody something. So it's not a big problem here. Now the app is going to be both a positive and a negative for me, because the app is great because it brings in music. You didn't get to hear the music because it was going to wash out what I was saying during the playthrough, but it's got a very nice background soundtrack that's playing that adds atmosphere to the game. It brings in great visuals. It makes it very easy for you to engage with these conversations and these storylines that are coming up. Very easy for you to select options in that story to see how things are happening. It also is really cool in this sort of check system, right? Because as we're doing checks, the app is going to respond to how many checks you put into the system. So it doesn't ruin anything sort of by letting you know that if you get 2, you succeed, and if you get 1, you get a medium success, and if you get 0, you fail. Having those things come up in games sort of pulls you out of the story and makes you feel, this is game, this is mechanisms. I'm not hugely into that kind of thing. But in something like this with the app, it's doing all of that behind the scenes. So I put in a number and it's going to respond to that number. Now a 4 might be great in one situation, but normal in another situation. A 0 might be a horrible fail in one situation and just mean you get a little bit less of something in another situation. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, where we are going to see some problems is with so much of an app, with such a great, well-designed app as we have here, how much of the physical component is necessary? Now, I'm a big fan of the cards. The cards are great. The items show you exactly what you have. It's nice to see them in front of you, to know all of the things you have. I suspect moving forward in the sort of crime-solving thing, there might be pieces or there might be things on the card that you can see with your eye that will help you sort of figure out the puzzle and help you look forward and try and piece together what's going on. So having that there in front of you on the table is great. The player boards are amazing, and I'll explain to you in a minute, but the main mechanism of the skill checks is great. It was great in Destinies, it's great here, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But I'm sort of want to keep my train of thought, and I started in a weird place, so we'll keep going with that. But the maps, the locations, and the minis, and I guess then the tokens as well, I don't know that they're completely necessary here. It's nice to see the map. It's nice to see the beautiful illustrations, and they are beautiful illustrations of the locations. The minis are very cool. The character design is very cool. So having all that stuff is pretty. It's nice to have it in the box, but ultimately, I 9 times out of 10 forgot to move my mini on the board because it didn't matter where it was going. In the previous game, Destinies, which was very similar, move a guy around on a map and interact on an app based on skill checks kind of game, it felt a little bit more important to have those minis because there was some limitation as to how far I could move my character on the map. So I needed to remember where I was so that I could remember how far I could go. But in this game, on my turn, I can go anywhere that I want to. There is no restriction on movement here. So to have a marker on the board that shows my person is at that location really doesn't do anything for the game because I have to select the location in the app anyway. Now, I don't know for sure that further on in the story, in the campaign, things won't happen because multiple people are at the same location and I can see who else is at the location. And it also does remind me, I didn't do any of it in the game, but you can actually trade items at a location and you can support another character at another location. In the solo game, I didn't take much use of that because I was really not thinking that far ahead, but I should have, and we'll come back and talk about that in a second. But that ability to trade and do other things, yes, is important. So yes, it's important to see where people are on the board, and sure, if you're playing with 4 characters, I guess that's more important. But ultimately, with the ability to go anywhere on the board, and the fact that all of my location activation and communication and interaction happens in the app, it does take up a lot of space on the table to have all those cards out, and they really aren't necessary. Just a stack of item cards and player boards was probably all that needed to happen in this game. But that said, it doesn't hurt to have the extra stuff. It's nice to have it there, and ultimately, I guess, why not? All that being said, all that aside, coming back to the mechanisms of the game, the gameplay in the game, the main core elements of the game is the crime solving, the sort of story piece of the game. and the skill check system. Let's start with the skill check system because this is something that came out in Destinies, right? Destinies to me was a very, very fun multiplayer game. I played it all the way through 2-player and I had a blast playing it. And the reason I had a blast playing it is this skill check system. I think it's a really, really cool idea for a skill check system that you can see on your board sort of the levels of your skills based on where those cubes are for each of your skill. And then you roll the dice and get however many successes based on the number of cubes that sort of fall below the number that you rolled. And this idea of updating or upgrading or leveling up your different skills in the game, in both Destinies and here, is really, really, really fulfilling. And it's a really, really clever way to do a skill check that I haven't seen done like this before. So I was very happy to see it carried over from Destinies to here in this game. Now they did a couple things differently in this game. In Destinies, you spend experience points directly to move cubes and level up your skills. And I would have liked to have seen some of that here because it did feel nice to be constantly getting better and getting better during the gameplay when I was playing Destinies. However, I understand that this is a long campaign. I understand that everything is going to be really tied together, much more so here than it was in the Destinies game. So if they continue to keep that in this game, it would have meant that your guys would be super overpowered very quickly and very early in the game, and I can completely understand why they didn't do that. Instead, using those experience tokens to instead add an extra effort die to a roll was really cool because it meant that I could use an effort die on a first check and then potentially have further skill checks on the same turn and continue to have effort dice for those rather than basically failing because I had wasted my effort dice on early checks and didn't have them left for later checks. So I think that's still a really, really cool way to use the experience. Now on top of that, in both Destinies and this game, you're going to have items that will either continue to allow you to do something cool or will allow you to discard them to do something cool. But in this game, on top of those, you also have the ability cards that are unique to each of the characters. And that's one of the greatest things about this game as a step up over Destinies is that everybody in this game does feel very unique. The characters have their own flavor and they have their own abilities. And I'm very excited to see moving forward in the campaign in the full version of this game all of the different kinds of abilities that come out. Because what these do is they basically just manipulate or give you ways to manipulate the dice in this really cool skill check system. So to have ways to toy around with or play around in this skill check system, I think is really, really cool. And I'm very happy to see that added to this game. Now, the next piece of this, aside from that skill check mechanism, is the story. The story that I've seen is very good. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the story in Destinies too, but I really enjoyed the story here as well, and I enjoy it a little bit more for one big reason, and that is, again, these characters feel really good, right? These characters all have a very unique backstory. They all have very specific character flaws of some kind. All of those flaws tie into the story in some way, and all of them sort of play in a slightly different way because of those backgrounds. Also, I really loved in this game how in the story each of these characters have specific locations and specific characters and specific things that only that character is able to interact with because that makes it feel even more unique. And now I haven't played the campaign because all that's been given to us is this first scenario, but those pivotal moments, if they turn out to be what they seem like they're going to be, could be game changers. If I make a decision on my character's sort of personality or core beliefs in these pivotal moments that legitimately change the story or legitimately change the way that my character interacts with the world moving forward, that's going to be really, really cool to see play out. One of the things that I loved most about Destinies is that it really felt like it was a living world. At the start of a turn or at the end of a turn, things were happening in the world based on things that I did, but also not based on things, just based on the world progressing and being alive, right? Characters would move from place to place, events would happen, and sometimes that was based on things that I had done previously, but sometimes, again, it was just from time passing, and that still happens here, right? You saw in my playthrough, the vampire showed up at the crime scene. That was just at the beginning of a turn. I didn't expect that to happen. Or when I was playing with Constance, at the beginning of my turn, I suddenly received a letter. Like, these kinds of things are really cool because It doesn't feel like I'm pushing a button and something happens. It feels like I am a character in a world that's growing and telling a story, and the things that I'm doing in that world matter in some way, but also the world around me is continuing to evolve without me in some way as well. Now, are there negatives about the story or the gameplay? Yes, but let me talk about them because those are going to be negatives to me, but not negative enough to ruin the experience because I still really enjoy the experience that I've seen so far with this. Another thing that I really like about this game is the crime solving. Because the story is so strong and because the world is so interesting and because the characters are unique, I really want to be able to solve the crime. I really want to figure out the story because the more I figure out, the more I learn about the story and the more interesting the story becomes. Now, what I loved about Destinies is that, yes, I was competing against my partner, or my opponents, I guess, because it was a competitive game, and this here is a cooperative game. I didn't feel any sort of impending stress. Yes, the world was changing. Yes, things were falling apart, but we were both, my opponent and myself, trying to play through and learn the world and achieve something in the story that was going on. Now, this is a crime-telling game, or a crime-solving game. And what that means is ultimately we have to solve a crime. But what that means here in this game also is that, like in the real world, if I take too long in solving a crime, things are going to happen. Things are going to change. It might become more and more difficult or even impossible for me to solve the crime because I missed something and the world has just moved on from that. And looking at one of Lucky Duck's other games, Chronicles of Crime, this was one of my biggest problems with the game. Because I really wanted to solve the puzzle, but there was this real ticking clock running in the background that eventually would just shut down the game if I hadn't solved the game at that point. And unfortunately, that ticking clock is still here in this game. And that was my biggest sort of bad feeling or bad experience about this game. Because at some point, regularly throughout this game, I kept getting hit with messages from my boss at the agency basically every other turn or every few turns saying, hey, you're taking too long. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Hurry it up, hurry it up, hurry it up. Do you want a hint? And that makes me feel like I kind of have to take a hint because clearly I'm missing something that I didn't know I was missing. But I don't want to use a hint because I want to solve the problem on my own. And it just means that I haven't made the right decision or I haven't gone to the right location yet. And the fact that I can miss something because the timer is ticking and I just chose to do something else interesting really causes me stress. And it's not a very good stress. However, in this case, the story is fun. There's so much other stuff going on here that it did really make me push on anyway, right? Now, I did say I failed the first time I played through this game. I failed the first time I played through this game for that very reason. Eventually, a message just popped on the screen and said, hey, you didn't solve the crime in time, something happened, you fail. And that felt not great. And the second time I played through, I did use some of those hints because I felt the pressure to use those hints when the timer was ticking on. And ultimately, probably because I used some of those hints and because I didn't completely succeed in everything I was trying to do, I got a poor rating, which also didn't feel great. That said, I can't really speak on this now because this is a campaign game. And this, more importantly, is a fail-forward campaign game, which means that even when I failed, even when I got a poor on that ending, all that meant to me was the story moved on without me. I missed something, but the story continues. And my hope is that the story continues in such a way that it continues to be interesting, and something that I missed in the early scenarios, I can catch up on in later scenarios because something else happened and I learned the information in a different way. So I'm guessing there's going to be some catch-up mechanisms, per se, in the storytelling. But also, the story itself, if you focus on the story and don't pay attention so much to the stressful sort of clock that's ticking in the background, the story itself is still progressing. It's still an interesting story, right? If I watch a movie when a detective fails at something and later on has a eureka moment and succeeds later in the story, that's still a really interesting story, even if he failed at the beginning. So my hope is that playing through the longer campaign, some of that stress of failure and the time moving forward sort of disappears because the story continues to be interesting as it moves forward. So little things like the fiddliness of moving around on the board, little things like this ticking clock in the background definitely make me feel a little less than happy about the game, but the unique skill check system, the unique characters, I should mention one of the characters had something specific that was hurting them throughout the thing unless I reacted or found a way to deal with that. So the characters are more unique than I can say, and I don't want to push too much because I don't want to spoil too much of the fun that I uncovered. But that skill check system, those unique characters, the pivotal moments, and the sort of character-specific storylines, coupled with really cool storytelling, really interesting cases, at least from the one case that I've seen, all of that is really, really shining enough that I don't care too much about the things that make me feel less than happy in this game. Plus, I should mention as a solo player, I was very happy that this one is a co-op game because I tried to play Destiny solo and there were two options. One of them was a sort of wander the game exploring as you want to until you solve the game. And the other one was a very serious, strict ticking clock in the background. And you've just heard from me that I don't like that stress of ticking clocks. So for the solo and Destinies, it felt either no pressure or no goal versus too much pressure pushing me through the game. And I just hit hard off of that one solo and ultimately enjoyed it as a multiplayer game more. But in this case, because it's co-op, and also because there's not a whole lot to sort of manipulate or to deal with as far as items and player boards and those kinds of things, this one is not very difficult to multi-hand as a solo game. And you know what? When I play through this game later on, if I do get a chance to play through the full campaign, I may go 4 characters in a solo game just so that I can have all of the stuff going on, just so I can see as much of the story as I can playing through that campaign. I'm excited for this one. I am very strongly excited for this one. There are some things, like I said, that irk me a little bit, but not enough to keep me away from this game. If you like storytelling, if you've seen Destinies or played Destinies and you love that skill check system, if you think you'll love the skill check system based on my playthrough and what I've just explained to you, this is definitely a game for you to check out. Now, if you do feel stress from a time or a clock pushing on you, if you do not like an app-driven game, maybe this is a game that you're going to want to double look at before you decide whether or not it's something that's right for you. But in either case, if you like this theme, if you like this kind of story, if you like a good puzzle, a crime puzzle to solve, definitely give this one a look because it's a whole lot of fun and I'm really, really excited to see what else it has to offer in the full campaign. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.